What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another excellent edition of Under Review, where we look at all the latest and greatest games that come out for a majority of all the consoles. This week we are looking at The World Ends With You, the final remix for the Nintendo Switch. Now I'll begin by saying that I have been a fan of this game since its original release back on the Nintendo DS in 2008. And I thought it played extremely well, especially on the dual screens. But since the initial release date of the game, we have seen an iOS release which played very, very well and actually paved some way for other RPG ports and dual screen RPGs to get the single screen mobile treatment. Now we get the Switch version of this popular JRPG game and properly named the final remix. This is a game based on the awkwardness of growing up as a teen, becoming who you are destined to be in the crucial years of finding yourself, and what you will become in this ever-changing world. You meet other characters who have very overt personalities that may or may not mesh with your own. So from the very beginning, you will notice that this game has a very large dialogue system. Lots and lots of dialogue. Some of it you will hear voice acting, but like other JRPGs, a majority of it is going to be text-based. So it's going to be a lot like what the what was the last one we did? Octopath Traveler, where you have some dialogue that's spoken between characters, and then a lot of it you have to actually end up just reading it. So Final Remix actually has a pretty dynamic story, and even though the game was released in 2008, it actually still holds up very well. You assume the role of Niku. You will find yourself on the streets of Tokyo in a game. Yes, a game. You are part of a game that only other players and masters of the game can see and interact with you. It'll become much more clear, especially when you first start the game up. I will say visually the game is a marvel. It actually holds up very, very well over the years, and since its original release date. So even though the iOS version did receive a graphics upgrade, the final remix did have very minor variations to that version. It still looks very sharp and is a bit more detailed, but the final remix does offer a new unlockable game mission that can only be accessed after you finish the game. So this encourages players to increase difficulty and rewards if you go back through the character missions again. Another really standout for me is the game soundtrack, which was a standout for me in the original version. It did receive some tweaks and now features a more emo grunge type of sound. But if you like me prefer the old soundtrack to the game, you can choose which one you wish to play, which I thought was actually a pretty cool thing. I still prefer the original, but you can choose which soundtrack you actually want to play during the process of the game. Now, the game's fight system was one of the original's high notes, and it actually returns. So when you're playing the game in handheld mode and utilize the touchscreen like you would on a DS essentially, it is so fluid and satisfying. Using your finger to motion your swipe attacks is simple and very effective. However, when you play the game in docked mode and try using the motion controls that are integrated when you try to play in this mode, the fighting system is a disaster. The motion controls do not function very well and I mean quickly become irritating by the amount of times I have been knocked back and fought to try to regroup with something as small as my cursor not working the way it should be doing. This drove me to continue playing this game in handheld mode. And to me, the only way for this game to be played is going to be in handheld mode. I mean, the game launched on the DS and then later on the iOS. So what that means is it's all what? Handheld. I felt that should have been tried to be tracked to something. I mean, why do the console mode at that point? And they should have done away with the motion controls altogether because they just seem to have broken the experience. Motion controls were just a disaster. It seemed tacked on and should not have been part of this experience. But overall, I will say The World Ends With You, the final remix, is a solid JRPG. And coming off the success of Octopath Traveler, It is showing that there is plenty of gamers that want this type of game on the Nintendo Switch. Me being one of them. Aside from the horrible motion controls, this game really held up well to its own handheld version, which, you know, is the DS and then later the iOS version. But handheld mode is the way you need to play this game on the Switch. Trying to play this in dock mode is just a disaster waiting to happen. The story holds up well, and even combat, despite the console mode not working very well, is ask the question: is it worthy of a purchase? My answer to that is yes. If you have the iOS version, however, you are not going to be getting much of an improvement. So if you have the iOS version, you're probably okay with just sticking with that. But if you, like me, never played the game beyond the initial DS release back in 2008, and you're looking for something a little bit more of it, like you want another version of this game, and you don't have the iOS version yet, this is perfect. And if you're a fan of it then, you will continue to be a fan of it now, but like I said before, please play this game in handheld mode. So for that, we gave The World Ends With You, the final remix, a solid 8 out of 10. We thought it was a good game, aside from some of the tacked on motion controls. Great game, great addition to the Nintendo Switch, and if you're a JRPG fan and you don't have the iOS version of this, it's going to be a must own. So that's going to do it for us. I'm KODX Factor. This is Under Review, and until next time, game on.